boy. Yeah, so the fight scenes, they felt pretty flat to begin with. Didn't really have much depth. Um, and if you compare the fight scenes in this movie compared to the old movies, the good old movies, it kind of falls flat, like on its face, pretty much. The choreography isn't really what you'd expect. I don't really know if that's kind of because of the some of the angles they used when they shot the fight scenes. Yeah. Um, I don't know. It didn't. It lacked kind of the weight in the fight scenes, kind of a thing. I don't know. You didn't really feel the punches hit in a way as hard as they might should have. So I don't know. They weren't fight choreography that you would expect from a Matrix movie, what you've previously seen in other movies. So the fight scenes were a bit of a letdown.
I think it was some combinations because you have the it's corona restrictions too, so it was probably some with the recording of the scenes. They couldn't be there, and and then in the edit, it was probably some faults too. So it was
Yeah,
a lot of it did feel like no energy in the fight scenes. It was like, for me at least, it didn't feel like they didn't connect with the like any weight in the fighting. So
yeah,
Gums, what do you
pretty
think
much.
about the fight?
Well, I mean, my main issue was the sheer amount of bullets they fired at the other characters, and not one of them hitting. I can suspend belief for so much in the Matrix, but the fact that like they're up close and personal and they can't hit a single bullet on one of them, yeah, it was. And the fight scenes, like Saul and yourself said, compared to the original Matrix, are nothing. It's terrible. I don't know whoever said that was a great idea, that we'll go from that Matrix and what we're used to this kind of, I don't know. I don't know what to put it. It's like someone
Low,
playing.
yeah, low energy
Uh,
fight. So Gums, what do you think about the story?
well, the story is so convoluted, and they tried to take a new spin in this movie, and I think it failed in them trying to do that. They tried to take what had been previously established and reinvent it. And me personally, I found watching that movie was like they had taken the Matrix name, but they had changed everything about it. So it was literally just gutting the whole franchise and just giving us this end result, which, yeah, the story for me was bland. It wasn't interesting, and by the end of it, I couldn't remember most of what was happening. So
Yeah, and the character did feel really weird because uh, Neo was just moping around. It was probably some, you know, real life about mental health and stuff like that, and what is real, what is fake. How a person with like mental problems can have, depression, etc., etc., etc. So it was probably a take on that, I think. So
Yeah,
what do you think about Morpheus, Salt?
yeah. They kind of tried to do this, like a younger Morpheus version.
But why? I mean, I
Well,
did never understand why. I mean,
yeah, I mean it's and the fact that he kind of was a mix of Morpheus and Agent Smith, because in
yeah,
at the end of or in the beginning of the movie he's an agent,
yeah.
and then he kind of gets unplugged, and the Morpheus program like surfaces more, I
Hmm.
suppose, and he kind of turns into Morpheus. Um, I mean, to be fair, nobody can really beat Lawrence Fishburne. I
Yeah,
mean,
agreed.
it's it's such an iconic character, and it like
But
Fishburne, which we'll jump in on a bit later.
so, Guns, what do you think about the reuse of the old content? You know, when they show back in the days.
I did not like the use of that. I feel like how they kind of faded it in, or how they mixed it together. You know, showing those flashbacks to the original Matrix, it just didn't gel for me. I thought it was like someone had done it in like some amateur program or something. It didn't seem to flow with the actual movie. So yeah, I did not. I think yeah, that would probably be the most enjoyable part of that movie, was watching the flashbacks. But that's me
Yeah.
personally.
Neo was making a fucking game, a
Hmm.
Matrix game. I mean, why?
I mean that was the kind of what I gather being the reason why they had him make a Matrix game, was so he would concentrate on that.
yeah,
Uh, and not, yeah, I know it's a, not a really good excuse, but that's kind of how I gathered it from the movie. They were kind of trying to keep him busy from not digging in the actual Matrix. Um,
but
and
but uh, but but the problem was for me. We didn't really see when he made the game like that. He just did sit in the terminal and he didn't know anything about it, just like sitting there in a
yeah, I
room
mean,
alone. It was really
yeah,
weird.
but I mean the game was already done.
Yeah,
Uh,
but
but yeah, eh.
Gams, what do you think about the fourth walling they did in the movie?
I think it was a really bad idea that they when you break that, you can. There's been successful movies that break the fourth wall when they do it correctly. But in this movie, not so much. Not at all. I'd say them breaking the fourth wall in this movie just added to the pile of reasons why it should have never been made. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I think of that.
it did feel like it wasn't. The director wasn't serious to make the movie.
Yeah, like they didn't want to
The
make it,
Yeah, yeah,
And I think some
and
of
you
the
did
actors
feel
didn't want
it.
to be there.
Yeah. What do you think about Trinity, the character?
Well, I mean, it felt like they were kind of updating her character for current standards, if you would put it like that.
She was almost not in the movie.
No, not that much. And she, yeah, she wasn't in the movie at all, really. Oh well, not
In the
that
end.
much. Yeah, in the end, kind of. She popped in
And,
and out.
when you did see, Neo and Trinity talk, it didn't feel like the characters was in the same scene. They was like one was in an other place and other actor was in the other place. It didn't feel like they was in the same scene sometimes.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
and I think it's because of the corona restrictions, probably. But
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not
but
sure.
even so, it doesn't. She that doesn't really explain her kind of character shifts. She didn't.
Yeah,
I mean, okay, sure. They kind of brought her back to life in the movie. Um,
yeah. But wasn't that a take on religion, like the resurrection of Christ or something like that? It did feel like that. And then we have the Neo's power or fighting and martial art power. Uh, and why didn't he use guns in this movie? Neo,
that's
because
a good
if it
question.
is it because of the new political stuff, that you can't you know talk about weapons that much, or is it just
Well,
reasons?
to be fair, okay, they didn't use guns, but the enemies did. I mean,
Yeah, but he
you
didn't
saw a
use guns.
bunch. What?
Why didn't he use a gun? He just walked around and moped around and was like sad.
Well, he had his force push powers, so
Yeah.
And which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because one of the lines most people remember about the Matrix is, "I'm going to need more guns."
Mhm.
Lots of guns.
Yep, yep,
And and then in this movie you just see him just going, "Whoa!" Was he bloody from Street Fighter?
yep. Yeah,
Um,
Hadouken.
it seems like they tried to reinvent the one. Literally doesn't need guns and all
Yeah.
this stuff. They like you said, they've turned him like into a messiah figure.
I'm not sure what they wanted with the movie. It was like they just walked around and stuff happens and then it ended. And Trinity in the end, she was the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was but what was the point with it? I mean, it wasn't any. They could do a lot of interesting stuff, in the movie if they wanted to do it a good one.
Well, they spent a lot of time in the therapist office. They spent a lot of time in the cafe. They spent a lot of time in Neo's office. They spent a lot of time in
In
what
the
else would it?
cafe.
Yeah, yeah. I just don't understand it. Like literally, where Matrix has always been known for its action, this movie would be more about its locations.
Pretty much,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's I don't
was
know.
probably the sheep areas.
Yeah, yeah. The low rent areas.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. I agree. It was very. It was very boring. I mean, like in even. I mean, even the fight scenes. Some fight scenes were pretty boring. It wasn't
Mhm.
entertaining. It's like, oh, okay, they went from A to B. Nothing still happened. Not even any story development really, and they go from B to C.
Okay, was a little bit about the real world. Zion was okay. The point was a little bit around that, but was like it did feel like they cut the half the movie, even if the movie was quite long to watch. So,
Yeah. I
but it's
mean,
still,
look at the fact that in the previous universe of the Matrix, Morpheus said that everyone that's come up across an agent has either died or literally no one has ever come away from a fight with an agent and survived, basically.
yeah.
But in this movie, you see these average characters going up against these agents and surviving. So they've just destroyed the agents as well. They like nerfed them.
Uh, I'm okay. They are surviving, but they should barely survive at least. I mean,
Yeah.
it should be okay if they survive. It's like just like you know, one wrong step and they die. It should be like that. It can be tension because they can have learned to fight. There can be a reason, but
Yeah.
it should be like it should be more. What should we say? The fight should be more like tension that okay they can anyone of the like team or the
Yeah.
human like side can die all of the sudden because of the agents like the
Yeah, so
original.
consequences.
Yeah, consequences, yes. So any final thoughts on the movie?
Do not make a
Well,
sequel.
Especially a shit
enough's
one.
enough. Well, I mean, one fact that I'm going to take up also before I kind of give my final thoughts on is the uh, the fact that Morpheus apparently got killed off, and he's basically just a program in this movie. He's
Hmm.
not an actual person. That was a bit like okay. I mean, I don't necessarily mind the fact that they did that, but it was kind of an off-screen thing. It happened in between movies that he got killed off, and just the fact that his programming even was, didn't really live up to the hype of the old Morpheus. Really, that was a bit of a weird one, also. Yeah.
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 So, mm.
So Gums, you have
my final review on the movie is that I went into it trying to be open minded. I didn't want to judge it on previous movies because I thought they would continue the quality we're used to, if not improve upon it. And when I started watching this movie, there wasn't a moment where I was like, oh, I had like some kind of like connection to the previous movies. It's like I was watching a completely different standalone movie compared to the rest of the universe. And it had just taken the Matrix name. So, me personally, I would probably give it 1 star out of 5, and that's being generous. If I could give it a 0, I would, but I would say a 1, and that's my final review.
I probably give it a 1 too, because I was so bored watching it, so it was horrible to watch because the fight, the story, nothing interesting happened. The characters, I mean, if it was interesting characters, then maybe it would be interesting to watch. If it was interesting story, it could be interesting, or fight, etc., etc., etc. But it wasn't anything that was like fun or intriguing or like interesting to watch. So I give it a 1. If I could give it a 0. So Salt, what do you think about
Yeah,
what is
I
your
mean, yeah. So the story is very, very, very flat. You don't really follow it because it's so boring, as all of you said. Also, um, it's yeah. I mean, I'll give it a 1 too. If I could give it -5, I would give it -5 because it's. I mean, only real thing like when you watch this movie and you see that the old clips from the old movies, it makes you want to watch the old movies.
Mm-hmm.
yeah
So that's not a good sign. Yeah, I mean the fact that you almost fall asleep watching a
yeah
Matrix movie, uh, that's not a good sign.
No.
So
yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
So we're gonna end on this note, and we see you next time.
Yep.